From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
Warwick Mayor Frank Picozzi is arguably Rhode Island's most prominent political independent, and so far, it's been a recipe for success. Picozzi won a landslide re-election victory in November, receiving support from over 70% of voters in the state's second largest city. And thanks to a change in the city charter, Picozzi will get to serve 4 years instead of 2. So what does he plan to do with that mandate from voters, and what's his role in addressing the financial struggles of the Warwick school system? We'll ask our guest this week on Newsmakers, Warwick Mayor Frank Picozzi. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi. Warwick Mayor Frank Picozzi, Happy New Year and welcome to the program. It's good to see you.
Happy New Year. Good morning.
We should note your inauguration is on Tuesday. We haven't had you on the show since November. Congratulations on your win.
Thank you. In
November. I want to talk about the big thing happening in Warwick right now. It sure looks like the Warwick school budget is a mess. You were informed late last month that the school budget is facing a $9 million deficit for the current fiscal year. It's still not clear what the deficit is for last fiscal year. There's some debate on that. But for this fiscal year, why is it only coming to light halfway through the year that there is such a massive budget hole in the school budget?
Well, it surprised anyone else. They came to me, they told me initially it'd be $5 to $6 million, but then they hired someone to audit the books for them, and it turned out to be $9 million.
Did someone drop the ball?
A lot of people dropped the ball. My suspicion is, it's more than a suspicion, that they didn't spend their ESSER money there under the American Rescue Plan Act prudently. It should have been used for one-time expenses like we did in the city. I think they started a lot of programs that require a lot of personnel, and it came to this year, and they don't have the money coming in anymore from that. So we're stuck with a deficit.
So wasn't that a foreseeable problem there that the school department should have said? Because we should remind people that you don't directly control the schools, but the council budget that you and the council put together is what funds a portion of the schools. Like, shouldn't they have said, hey, we need all this extra money this year because the federal money is going to be gone?
Well, they should have made us aware of it, yes, and they should have been careful not to use that money. Here in the city, we used $2.4 million for the budget the first year in 2021
of federal COVID relief.
Exactly, but we never used it. We scrimped, we saved, and we avoided using it. We got $39.3 million. Every dollar is going into non-recurring expenses. So the money's not coming in anymore, but we've bought fire trucks, garbage trucks. We've done a lot of things, but none of it.
Skating rink, too, I think you used some money.
The skating rink, yes. That's one portion for $3 million of that. But none of them are non-recurring expenses.
So what should people expect with a $9 million budget hole? First, let's start with the school. Will there be layoffs?
That's up to them. I mean,
what are they telling you?
Well, they came to me last week. We meet every 2 weeks. They came to me last week and they had proposed cuts they can make to the budget to try to balance this year. And they had maybe $5.5 million of it. But looking at it, a lot of it wasn't realistic. I'd say half of it's realistic. But that doesn't fix going forward. That's to address this year. They still a $9 million structural deficit when we hit this upcoming budget year, which we're going to start doing and probably putting the budget together in March.
Then you know the next question, Mayor, and we saw it in Providence and what Mayor Smiley's dealing with, and he came right out and said that people should expect tax increases. Should people expect tax increases in your city?
It may happen because of this. However, we're different than Providence. Providence, they were found to be underfunding the schools. Since I've been here 4 years, between the state and the city, they've gotten $20 million in additional money coming in, and
from the city.
Yeah, it's $12 million from the city, 11.5, and the rest was from the state. It's $20 million plus the ESSER money they had. So this was irresponsible. We haven't been underfunding the schools. We've been giving them a lot of money, like a city council and myself. And, it's been fiscal mismanagement.
Well, and let's look, we have some stats from the Office of the Auditor General on how tax dollars are spent in Warwick. I was looking at it last night to think about the school funding stuff. 60% of the city tax levy goes to school funding, as you said, then 31% to retiree benefits. That's high in most Rhode Island cities, 5% to debt. Everything else gets 5% of the levy. I mean, when I look at that, you generally can't cut the retiree benefits. You generally can't cut the debt payment. So it wouldn't seem like there's a lot left for you to redirect money back to the schools if they're asking for that.
Right, exactly. But I mean, the course of action now is we have to meet with the Auditor General because they've had to be informed about this. And I think we're meeting the first week in January of next week. And we have to come up with, the school department has to come up with an action plan that they have to approve. It could be a 5-year repayment plan. But I mean, they don't have any money to repay us. It's to ratchet their budget down. So yes, there's probably going to be a tax increase for this. There was a tax increase last year, but it was due directly to their budget, not mine. And I dispute the 60%. I think it's more like 57% of the city's revenues go to the schools.
Well, that's the Auditor General's number,
right.
Not mine. So that's where we're getting it from. Another school funding issue is the high schools.
Yeah.
And it's separate. That's separate from the deficit, right?
Well, it's tied together now because, I mean, we can only come up with so much revenue. It was going to be hard to pay for the schools anyways. It could be $12 million a year. It could be $19 million.
Well, let's set the table on that. It was a $350 million bond, right?
$350 million bond.
Last I read, the 2 high schools Ted referenced, it looks like it's going to surpass that $350 million.
Yes.
How much?
They came to me a month and a half ago and said they were looking at $38 million. They wanted to use bond premiums. But when we did the bonds, we put it out to the voters, there were no bond premiums. 350 is 350 is 350. So since then, they've told me that it's trending towards being less costly and this and that as they're going along. But I mean, this puts that in jeopardy. If there's a $9 million deficit and we have to come up with that, maximum tax increase, a maximum increase to the levy by state law is 4%, and that's right around $9 million. The bond debt for those schools would be $12 to $18 million a year, depending what the interest rates are then. I mean, that gets better after 5 years when the state starts reimbursing us to 52.5% if we meet the goals, but we have to get there.
Well, that's yet another thing I read, and we're not trying to wail on the schools here. Just as we were looking at what's going on in Warwick, so many things were coming up, and my understanding was you need to break ground. Is it by March to start hitting those deadlines you just referenced from the Department of Education? So,
that's what I've been told.
Do you believe the schools need a final plan for the high schools by March?
Yes.
So I mean, they haven't told you they have one yet.
No. Step one is we have to go to the Auditor General. We're gonna know everything we have to know then.
Bottom line, Mayor, and it's funny, this whole conversation where, you're the leader of the city of Warwick, you're the elected leader, as Tim said, you just got a good mandate, and yet we're talking about all this big stuff that directly affects city taxes, and yet it's all they told me, because that's the structure. I mean, is there frustration as a mayor that you're sort of an observer, but then also you are affected by these huge projects that in the end you have to find the money for?
Any mayor in Rhode Island will tell you that. The school departments are totally autonomous. We have no say. We give them money. We appropriate money. And then we have no say. And we have an elected school committee. We have no control over them. It's frustrating for city councils also. And I know a lot of councilmen are very upset and concerned right now. There's talk about sending it back out to the voters to see if they still want to proceed with high schools, which I don't think we could get done. So as I said, I mean, we're just in a wait and see kind of mode right now. We have to get to the Auditor General first.
Do you have confidence in the superintendent?
I've known her for a long time. I think she's a wonderful person, but this is shaking my confidence in the school department altogether.
All right, we're going to take a break. Our guest obviously is Warwick Mayor Frank Picozzi. When we come back, is this the last year of the famed Picozzi Christmas lights? Could be. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi. Our guest this week is Warwick Mayor Frank Picozzi. Mayor, I want to play a snippet of an interview for you. Our colleague Leah Crowley reported on a lawsuit filed against the Warwick Water Department by 2 former employees alleging workplace harassment. They spoke with Leah a couple of months ago. Here's a quick portion of that.
The department was fostering a hostile work environment. They were condoning it, allowing it. And from there, it progressed. It became worse and worse. The men in that office could not control themselves when it came to a woman in the office.
Condoning it, allowing it, she's saying that the city turned a blind eye to pretty tough work situation in the water department. What do you say to that?
Well, that's an allegation that's been made. I disagree with it, and I look forward to our day in court.
You know, the other part of the story that Leah reported on is that one of the plaintiffs, who is Jewish, said he was used as the butt of a Nazi joke in which he was slapped across the face. Now, as you know, that city worker was criminally charged with a misdemeanor. That employee pled no contest. But last time I checked, he's still employed by the city, right? He's just been on sick leave?
He's been on sick leave for months.
Is on paid sick leave right now? So is the city still paying?
It's whatever sick days he's accrued, he's entitled to get them.
And what is, if you can tell us, what is the plan with that employee?
The plan?
Yeah.
I don't know if he's coming back. I really don't. We'll have to deal with it.
Let me ask it a different way. Are you moving to terminate that employee for his actions?
I can't tell you personnel matters right now.
Is that because it's in litigation?
Exactly.
Okay. Ted?
Is there anything further you want to say about that situation, Mayor?
No.
I mean, it was pretty, what she said was pretty, it sounded pretty alarming. I know you said they're allegations, but certainly it's going to raise concerns, I think, in the city.
Oh, absolutely, it has. And I mean, we've moved to change things, to monitor things better. I mean, that was one department in the city with a lot of departments. So it's not a widespread problem. You know, I can't say a whole lot about it because it's in litigation, but, you know, I look forward to our day in court, too.
Do you think that department is in a better place now than it was in the past?
It is. We've restructured a lot of it.
All right, let me ask you about a different issue, housing, which is a big topic all over Rhode Island. I looked at the Housing Works RI annual fact book. They look at each city and town. According to their research, a family would need to earn $127,000 a year right now to buy the typical house in Warwick, and they'd need to earn $86,000 to afford the typical rent for a two-bedroom apartment. Are you okay with those numbers as the mayor?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, in Warwick, we have over 1,000 residential units being built. Currently, they're in different stages of construction, but we need even more. The only way statewide to solve this problem is to start creating more product. You know, it's supply and demand right now. There's just a shortage of housing. I don't know how it became that way. It must be out-of-state people moving here. The speaker's taking the lead on this, and he's absolutely right. I support everything he wants to do. We need more housing units. And like I said, in Warwick, I mean, before the legislature passed all of these, we were already moving pretty well. I mean, we've got a lot going on in Warwick. We've got a lot of construction, a lot of new businesses opening, and over 1,000 residential units. But those, I mean, the houses that are being built, they're being sold for over $500,000, and they're just really starter homes.
I mean, you've lived in Warwick. Have you lived your whole life in Warwick, or most of your life?
No, I moved when I was 8.
Okay, so most of your life you've been in Warwick. It must be striking to you now, as the leader of the city, to see how much. I know, you know, my wife's from Warwick, and marvels sometimes when she sees the sale prices in neighborhoods in the areas where she grew up that she thought of as affordable for middle-class families. She's like, that house is $500,000?
It's incredible. I mean, I paid 20-something years ago, I paid $150,000 for my house, and I could probably sell for over $4 now. And it hasn't gotten better. It's still a ranch house.
Well, your wife might have something to say about that, more projects maybe. Well, it was interesting. You said there, we should note Speaker Shikarchi is from Warwick as well, so you guys have crossover constituencies there. But, you know, some mayors or some community leaders, I should say, you know, have hesitation about how aggressive he's been in pushing. We've got to build more. We've got to build more. You actually sound pretty on board with, yes, we do need to build more, even if in some cases, well, I should say neighbors sometimes don't like when these projects come up. Have you experienced that?
Well, we experience that with everything. You open a car wash, a store, it's NIMBYism. And I understand that people don't like change in the neighborhoods. Usually, you know, everything complies with law, and they usually get used to it once it's built. But the first reaction is, we don't want that here. It's going to cause traffic. It's going to cause this. It's going to cause that. But that's just part of the process.
T.F. Green, you wanted local representation on the board of the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. State Rep Joe McNamara put forth the bill. According to reports, including in the Rhode Island Current, you met with the governor,
yes,
who told you he supported the bill.
Yes.
Then in committee, his office opposed it.
Yes.
Did you feel blindsided?
Oh, yes, I absolutely did.
Have you talked to him since?
Not really, not on this subject. We don't speak often. But, you know, I still want that. Representative McNamara said he's going to put it again this year, and I'm going to keep fighting for it because we do need a voice on that board.
Why is it? Just illustrate why that's important.
The cargo facility they're building now. I mean, they need to keep Warwick in mind. It's being built on the airport, and I actually support it. It's important. It's important. The airport is vital to our economy and Rhode Island's. However, sometimes they just don't keep Warwick in mind, and I want someone there that will report to me, tell me everything that's going on, because they don't always tell me everything, and just keep reminding them Warwick is here. Yeah, you know, you have to think about the residents too.
The Warwick Beacon had a report on some real concerns, it sounded like, among at least some employees about airport leadership and the work environment there. Again, you're kind of on the outside looking in with the airport, and that's why you want a seat on the board. But do you have concerns about the overall, how the airport is being run, since it is, you know, no one's closer to it than the people in Warwick?
Right. Well, I've gotten every anonymous letter that John Howell has over the last few years.
From the Warwick Beacon.
Yeah, the long-time editor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone knows who he is.
Yeah, he needs.
He's been on the show, actually.
Yes.
But you know, they're anonymous letters. I don't know how much, you know, how valid they are. But what happens inside that fence isn't really my concern. How the airport runs, I mean, it's how it affects Warwick. I'm not Batman. I'm not the Cape Crusader. I can go solve all the problems with the airport corporation. I'm not looking to do that. I mean, that's the governor's job.
All right.
I have to look out for the quality of life in Warwick.
We have to wrap it up, but obviously have to ask about this. Before becoming mayor, you were best known for your Christmas light display, which we have some video of. It's elaborate, to say the least, and I'm sure your electric bill is sizable. You posted on social media that this is likely the last year?
It is last year.
For sure?
For
Yes,
sure.
it is.
Why?
How come?
Father Time's caught up with me. It's difficult for me to do it. First of all, being mayor, I don't have the time to put into it that I used to. There's a lot of off-season work that I haven't been able to do, maintenance, improvements, things like that. The display's gotten older. A lot of it needs to be rebuilt, and I just don't have the physical ability to go up on that roof every year and then a couple of times a night to keep things running. It's just time to end, time to be over.
Is it? I have to admit, my Christmas lights are a little more scaled down than yours at my house. Is it like a nightly maintenance? You know, I grew up in Attleboro around La Salette, and they have people constantly working on it. Is it like that when you have a big household display?
Oh, it is. I mean, things go wrong with it. It's all, you know, do-it-yourself stuff. As a matter of fact, last night, New Year's Eve, I came back from the Rocky Point fireworks, and there was a big crowd, and a lot of people came since I announced it was probably going to end. And I had to go up on the roof and set up a ladder and reach way up, and they were yelling at me, "You're crazy, you're going to get killed." I was able to fix it, and I came down. It's a lot to do.
It's got to be bittersweet for you.
It is. I'm very sad about it. You know, I've watched kids grow up there. There were people when they were kids that came that have brought their kids, but everything has to end.
What are you going to do with all the lights? We have to go, but I'm just curious. What are you going to do with all the lights?
Dumpster.
Oh, really?
No one else can use this stuff like that. You know,
Really?
Yeah. There's nothing really. I have all the electronic components and all the controllers, things like that. I'm giving them to friends across the country that are, that are in the hobby.
Do you know? Is there a network of people across the country who are into the big holiday displays?
Yeah, I mean, it started 2 decades ago. We just had, there was no Facebook then. We had forums on websites, and we've stayed together. As a matter of fact, a lot of them I made close friends with. They're all usually on the Eastern Seaboard. We get together once or twice a year.
All right, we're going to get in trouble here. We have to go to a break. Mayor Frank Picozzi, thanks for coming on the program. When we come back, some new details in the cyber attack. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. This is Ted Nesi. We're joined by Target 12 investigator Eli Sherman for a reporters roundtable. Eli, I want to talk about the cyber attack. Target 12 obtained some of the data that hackers released on the dark web in the cyber attack on Monday. What did we get? A gigabyte of data approximately?
Yeah, we got about a gig of compressed data, and opened up it was about 10 gigs. And based on everything that we've seen of what's available now on the dark web, it's about 1%, so a tiny little sliver of everything that's made.
And I want to be clear, this was not Eli Sherman going onto the dark web, downloading this information. We received it from a third party, but we wanted to be safe here in this building at WPRI, and we work with the IT department to make sure we could do that.
Yeah, when you get data from the dark web, you really don't know what might be in it. There's malware, these cyber criminals, that's what they do. They set up little traps that anything could jump out and start operating on your machine, get into your system. So we luckily have a great IT department here at WPRI. They set me up on a very isolated old machine that can't get into any of our systems, which really protects us when we're trying to go over what exactly is in there from messing up our system, like what happened with the IT system with the state.
You weren't kidding about the laptop. I think I saw you putting coal into it to get it to run. All right, so you spent an entire day in a conference room locked away from the rest of us. Don't feed the animals. Eli's in there. What did you find?
Yeah, so again, a tiny sliver of the overall data, and what I was looking at was really connected to the Social Security Administration and a lot of data that's transferred between the state and the federal government. And so I want you to think of SSI, SSDI, cash assistance, these social service programs that really go towards the neediest. And what I'm seeing in there is names, Social Security numbers, in some instances banking account information, even private insurance numbers in some cases, and addresses. So really personal information of people who are participating in this program. And the window, Tim, was back to at least 2018, 2017, which is in line with what the state has told us, which is that the compromised data is in the window of all the way back to 2016.
We should let people know that we have steps you can take on WPRI.com to protect your information. We urge you to check that out. Before I get to Ted on politics, 30 seconds or so. I mean, we've been reporting on the cyber attack since the end of the last year, and the state's been telling us, you know, what kind of was in there. But were you surprised as you were going through the files and looking at the amount of information, even though it's, you know, 1% or whatever it was of what was actually released? Did anything like shock you?
I think the most shocking thing for me was just how much there is there. Again, I'm looking at 1% of what's available right now, and it took me an entire day just to basically skim through and understand what it is that I'm looking at. Just an extraordinary amount of information right now that has been released to anybody who wants it that can go on the dark web.
All right, Ted. Politics, I want to look ahead to 25 General Assembly is about to ramp up again. We're going to have House Speaker Joe Shekarchi on the program next week. I'm looking forward to that. Couple in a new presidential administration poised to take over. I guess the question is, what are you watching?
Well, it's going to be a really busy month, Tim, politically. I mean, you have, as we tape this on Friday the 3rd, the new Congress is set to gather in an hour or so at noon, and we'll see, is Speaker Johnson quickly put back in place? Is there any kind of a fight? Is it, you know, I think that'll give us a sense of how chaotic or not the U.S. House is going to be this year and what that will mean. Next Tuesday, you have the General Assembly coming back. We just had the announcement yesterday that Dave Takoyan, who's a fairly new Smithfield State Senator, will be the new whip as Dominic Ruggiero tries to sort of right the ship after all the dissent about his leadership as he's been sick. So that'll be coming up, and then the House is meeting and everything. And then a week later, the governor's giving his State of the State a little early this year, January 14th, because of the calendar. And then that means the state budget bill will come out on the 16th. That's an important day because, as we've been talking, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at Shekarchi, we're expecting a pretty sizable deficit the governor will need to close after all these years, as Mayor Picozzi was alluding to, of the federal money coming in. That'll be interesting. And then a new president the following Monday on the 20th. And, you know, what will Trump 2.0 look like? I think that is going to be, that is a national story. I think it's going to be a local story, too, this downstream effects of, you know, which of his policies he's really going to push through and which were maybe a little more on the rhetoric side. So a lot to watch. It's going to be a very busy month.
Yeah, just even questions right now about whether the House will be stable enough to even certify the votes for the presidency. I'm guessing they'll probably get that together because it's the
I think people, I don't know if people have taken on board that, you know, Speaker Johnson can lose one vote in the Speaker's vote. And now if someone's like stays home, it could be a little, he could have a little more room to maneuver, but that House dynamic is going to be very interesting on Capitol Hill for the next 2 years.
All right, Ted Nesi, Eli Sherman, thanks so much for joining us. If you missed any of it, it's on WPRI.com. I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.